Reborn to the day I was fired by the ice-cold female CEO, I decided to completely lie flat. In my last life, I gave everything to love her and ended up covered in scars. This life, I just want to be a salted fish, fish a little, drink some tea, get my future sorted ahead of time, and enjoy life. But I didn't expect that the moment I let go, she, lofty and untouchable, would start a panic. The cold blast of the air conditioner blew from overhead, chilling the nape of my neck. The woman sitting across from me is named Sophia. She's wearing a well-tailored white suit, her long hair pinned up, revealing a smooth forehead and a refined jawline. She is the woman I spent half my life chasing in my last life, the woman who ultimately turned me into a joke. Ethan, let's talk. Her voice is as cold as the temperature in this office, without a trace of warmth. I look at her. The scene before me overlaps inch by inch with the images buried in my memory. It's this moment, that she neatly fired me for not being proactive at work and affecting team morale. In my last life, hearing those words felt like being struck by lightning. I panicked and tried to explain. I confessed desperately, saying that everything I did was for her, to be worthy of her. What did I get in return? Only a more contemptuous look and the line, "Don't make me look down on you." Those words were like a thorn, lodged in my heart for 10 years. Because of that thorn, I went insane starting businesses, chasing trends, bargaining with tigers, ruining myself until I was neither man nor ghost. I thought that if I succeeded, if I reached the same height as her, I could pull that thorn out. In the end, I failed, utterly defeated, and finally leapt from the rooftop. Unexpectedly, I was reborn, back at the starting point of all this tragedy. Ethan, Sophia frowned slightly when I remained silent for a long time. That familiar, impatient sign. I came back to myself and looked at her flawless face, but inside I felt utterly dead. Tired, really tired. I no longer wanted to experience that helplessness again, the feeling of giving everything and getting nothing. "All right," I spoke, my voice so calm it surprised even me. All of Sophia's rehearsed lines choked in her throat. For the first time, clear astonishment showed in her usually placid eyes. She had expected my pleading, my questions, even my breakdown, but she had never expected that calm. "All right." She didn't know that this Ethan before her already had his soul etched with the exhaustion of being rejected by her. What I mean is I broke the silence first, picked up the resignation agreement on the table without looking. I agreed to resign. I picked up the pen and signed my name at the end. The handwriting was messy, just like my laughable past life. "I'll finish packing my things today. As for salary and compensation, please have finance calculated." I pushed the signed agreement to her, stood up, and prepared to leave. The whole process flowed smoothly, without a trace of delay. Sophia was completely stunned. She looked at me, her eyes filled with scrutiny and bewilderment. She couldn't understand why I, who had been fighting with her colleague a few days ago and waiting under her company building with roses yesterday, would be so decisive today. This huge contrast made her feel an emotion toward me outside of work for the first time. Curiosity. "You," she finally spoke, as if wanting to ask something. I didn't give her a chance. "Miss Taylor, goodbye." I nodded politely and turned to leave. Not Sophia, but Ms. Taylor. That form of address was like an invisible wall, instantly widening the distance between us. When I reached the door and placed my hand on the handle, her cool voice came from behind me, carrying a faint, barely perceptible tension. "Ethan, are you trying to get my attention in a new way?" I stopped walking and didn't turn around. In my past life, I might have been overjoyed by that sentence, thinking she finally cared about me. But now, I only felt amused. I let out a light laugh, opened the door, and walked out without looking back. The door closed behind me, cutting off her probing gaze. I stood in the empty corridor and let out a long breath. The huge stone that had been pressing on my chest for 10 years seemed to have finally been moved. Goodbye, Sophia. In this life, I will live for myself. Back at my desk, my coworkers' gazes were varied. Some were sympathetic, some relished my misfortune, and others were simply curious gossip. I didn't care at all and quietly began packing my things. One cardboard box, a few books, a water bottle, a pothose plant. That was all I owned after 2 years of struggling here. My immediate superior, Marcus, a greasy middle-aged man, came over and hypocritically patted my shoulder. "Ethan, don't be discouraged. Ms. Taylor is doing this for the company's good. You're still young. There'll be plenty of opportunities." In my previous life, it was this Marcus who, after I was fired, quickly took over the project I've been following for a long time and used it to grab a large bonus. He even changed the project proposal's name and reported it upward as his own achievement. I looked at his hypocritical face and smiled. Mr. Wong is right. There will indeed be plenty of opportunities in the future. Only, the opportunities are mine, not yours. I hugged the cardboard box and walked out of the company building under the complex gazes of the crowd. The afternoon sunlight was a bit dazzling. I squinted and felt the whole world had become different. Without the obsession of chasing Sophia, my life suddenly gained countless possibilities. I didn't go home. I took a taxi straight to the bank. There was $50,000 in my account, all my savings. In my previous life, I took that money and impulsively started a business, only to lose it all in less than 3 months. This time, I knew this money would be the first cornerstone of my comeback. I entered a brokerage branch, opened an account, and transferred the entire $50,000 in. I remember clearly that 3 days later, an obscure tech company called Chivingkaji would announce a patent for a breakthrough battery technology, and its stock price would soar from $5 to $50 in just 1 week. In my last life, I knew nothing about this. By the time I saw it on the news, I had already missed the best opportunity. This time, I will be the earliest rent seeker. I didn't hesitate to go all in on Chiming technology. After doing all this, I felt completely relaxed. I didn't, like in my last life, stare at the market every day, getting terrified by the slightest fluctuation. I knew the outcome, so my mind was as calm as still water. This is the greatest advantage of rebirth, the information gap. They were still anxious about an uncertain future, while I was already standing at the finish line looking back. As I walked out of the service hall, I got a call. It was my best friend, Lucas. "Ethan, I heard you got fired? Is that for real?" "That Sophia woman is ruthless." Lucas's voice on the other end was full of anger. "It's true. Just finish the paperwork." I found a bench by the roadside and sat down, watching the traffic come and go. "Damn. So what are you going to do now? Do you have enough money? Why don't you come to my place? I'll set up a barbecue stall, and you could be the proprietress." "Ah, damn, boss." He made me laugh, and a warm current rose in my chest. In my last life, I was betrayed by everyone and left alone, with only Lucas staying by my side. Even when I was buried in debt, he never uttered a harsh word. "Don't worry, I won't starve. I'm planning to rest for a while." "Rest? Have you changed, kid? Weren't you the type who couldn't go a day without circling around Sophia before?" "That was then, this is now." I said lightly. "I've decided, starting today, I'm going to be a happy, salted fish." There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line, then a burst of laughter. "Ha ha, good. Be a salted fish. I support you. Come out for drinks tonight. We'll celebrate your salted fish rebirth." After hanging up, I stretched lazily. Yeah, being a salted fish does feel pretty good. For the next 3 days, I fully embraced the couch potato lifestyle. I turned off my phone, unplugged the internet, and slept until I woke up naturally. Then I went to the park near my home to watch the old men play chess and listen to the Annies sing rural folk songs. In the afternoons, I rented a fishing rod and sat by the river for the whole afternoon, whether or not any fish bit. My heart was calmer than ever. What I didn't know was that while I was enjoying my couch potato life, Sophia was anything but calm. She sat in the spacious office, a report on me placed before her. The report was simple. My life history was laid out clearly. Ordinary family, ordinary university. After graduation, I joined her company, my work performance mediocre, the only highlight being my almost obsessive pursuit of her. Sophia's assistant, a capable young woman named Chloe, stood to the side and asked cautiously, "Ms. Taylor, Do you want me to continue investigating? Sophia rubbed her brow and waved her hand. Chloe stepped back out, though her mind was full of questions. She had followed Sophia for 3 years, and this was the first time she'd seen her take such interest in a dismissed employee. What was so special about this, Ethan? Sophia was asking herself the same question. That day I left cleanly and decisively, like a pebble tossed in her calm heart lake, stirring ripple after ripple. She was used to controlling everything, and my reaction was the first to escape her control. She even had Chloe check my bank account to see if I'd found new backer. What they found was that not only had I found no backer, I had invested the only $50,000 I had into a junk stock, Cheeming Technology. Foolish. That was Sophia's verdict at the time. She remembered the stock, years of losses on the brink of delisting, a well-known trap in the capital market. She concluded I was giving up entirely. However, this morning the market gave her a resounding slap in the face. Cheeming Technology suddenly issued an announcement, declaring it had made a major technological breakthrough in solid-state batteries and had secured a large military order. At the opening, Cheeming Technology's stock immediately hit the daily upper limit. Countless funds went mad trying to pour in, but they simply couldn't buy any. Sophia stared at the bright red "Limit Up" sign on her computer screen, speechless for a long time. $50,000, multiplied tenfold, is $500,000. For her, $500,000 was nothing. But for someone like me, newly unemployed and with savings depleted, it was undoubtedly a fortune. Is it a coincidence? Sophia didn't believe in coincidences. In this world, behind any seeming coincidence, there was a necessary logic. For the first time, she began to study the name Ethan seriously. She pulled up all my work record from the past 2 years, project reports, even every message I had ever sent her. She tried to find a plausible explanation from these clues. But she failed. My past was as ordinary as a glass of plain water. This feeling of being unable to control things made Sophia feel a bit irritated. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. Help me look someone up? Ethan. I want to know who he's seen and what he's done in the past 3 days. The more detailed, the better. Of course, I didn't know any of that. I was carrying a palm-sized crucian carp, humming a little tune as I walked home. When I turned my phone on, a flood of messages came in. Some from Lucas, some from the bank, and a few from unknown numbers. I ignored the unknown numbers and opened Lucas's WhatsApp. Fuck. Ethan, you bastard got rich. Cheeming Tech. Did the stock god possess you? I smiled and replied. I said I'd be a couch potato, but you need capital for that, right? Then I opened the bank text message. Dear customer, the market value of your securities account has reached $550,000. Staring at that string of numbers, I took a deep breath. Good. The first step for this salted fish to turn over is secure. After earning my first pot of gold, I felt no excitement or need to show off. In my last life, I drank with clients until my stomach bled for a contract worth tens of thousands of dollars. Now, $500,000 is just the beginning to me. My goal is the stars and the sea. The first thing I did was rent an apartment on the top floor of a high-end complex in the center of Starport City with a huge terrace. I bought a bunch of flowers and plants, a comfortable lounge chair, and a barbecue grill. This would be my salted fish paradise. The second thing was transferring $200,000 to Lucas. Ethan, what are you doing? I don't want this. Lucas immediately returned the money. I call him right away. Take it. You always wanted to expand your barbecue stall into a storefront, right? Consider this my investment. From now on, I'm counting on you, boss, to have my back. There was silence on the other end of the line. I knew Lucas's dream was to open his own barbecue restaurant. In a last life, he gave me the money he had saved to open the shop to help pay off my debts. Okay, Ethan, thanks. Lucas's voice was a little choked. Don't get sentimental. I teased and hung up. After doing all this, I felt my thoughts clear. Coming back to life was not just to make money, but also to make up for the regrets of my previous life. In the afternoon, I was tending to my plants on the terrace when I received a call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Mr. Ethan? This is the Tianyu Private Club. Your friend Mr. Dylan has booked a private room for you tonight. Dylan? An oily, powdered face full of arrogance immediately surfaced in my mind. Dylan, a rich second-generation heir, was also one of Sophia's many suitors. In my previous life, he often tripped me up, frequently humiliating me in public, treating me as a stepping stone and a joke on his path to pursuing Sophia. Why did he come looking for me? I understood instantly. Showing off. If I quit, he'd surely think Sophia had completely abandoned me. And he, as the victor, would naturally want to flaunt himself in front of a loser like me. In my past life, I might have been angry, might have resented it. But now, I only feel bored. Sorry, I'm not available. I refused outright. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Lee says Miss Sophia will be here tonight too. My hand paused for a moment. Sophia is going too? Is Dylan trying to put on a show in front of me, winning the beauty back? I suddenly found it a bit funny. Fine, if he wants to perform, I'll go be an audience. While I'm at it, I might as well collect some interest. Send me the address. That night, I wore casual clothes and went to the Tianyu Club. Pushing open the private room door, there were already quite a few people inside. When Dylan saw me, he immediately stood up, an exaggerated smile on his face. Ethan, you finally made it. I thought you wouldn't dare come, he said as he pulled me to the seat next to the host. Seated in the main chair was Sophia. Today she wore a black long dress, different from her usual professional attire, with an added touch of softness. But her expression remained that same icy aloofness that kept people at a distance. When she saw me, her eyes flickered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. She, too, seemed surprised that Dylan had called me over. Ethan, I hear you made a little fortune recently? Dylan said loudly, intentionally so everyone could hear. Bought a lucky hit on a speculative stock. How does it feel? Like you're dreaming, right? Everyone burst into uproarious laughter. They looked at me as if I were a pauper who had just won the lottery. I ignored him and simply sat down, pouring myself a cup of tea. Luck is also a part of strength, I said lightly. Dylan was momentarily silenced by me, his face turning somewhat unpleasant. He hadn't expected that after only a few days apart, this poor youngster who used to be meek before him would dare talk back. Luck? Ethan, you don't really think you can turn your life around with a bit of luck, do you? He gestured toward everyone present. The deals we handle here are all projects worth tens of millions of dollars. What could your little sum possibly do? It's enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I leaned back in my chair, looking languid. Unlike some people who still have to work hard to accompany clients and pull in projects, my words hit Dylan's sore spot like a needle. His family was wealthy, but he himself was mediocre and relied entirely on family connections. He hated more than anything being said to be working hard. Dylan's face flushed the color of pork liver. Just then, Sophia suddenly spoke. Dylan, you called him here just to say this? Her voice was very cold, with a hint of displeasure. Everyone could see that Sophia was unhappy. Dylan immediately looked as if he'd been doused with cold water, hastily forcing a smile. Sophia, I'm just venting for you. That guy used to pester you so much, and now that you've fired him, I have to make him face reality. He thought he was helping Sophia, but he didn't realize that his words made her even more repelled. Sophia didn't look at him. Instead, her gaze fell on me. Ethan, she looked at me and spoke slowly. I heard you turned down the investment offer from Shanghai Capital. The moment those words came out, the entire private room fell silent. Shanghai Capital. That's one of the country's top investment firms. They actually invited Ethan? Dylan's smile froze on his face. I was taken aback too. I hadn't even told Lucas about this. How did Sophia find out? It seems she really is investigating me. I met her gaze and smiled. Yes, I admitted calmly. Different paths, no shared plans. She never expected that I would not only admit it, but use such an arrogant reason. Shanghai Capital is a place countless people fight tooth and nail to get into. Yet from my mouth it became different paths. Sophia's gaze grew even deeper. She found that she understood me less and less. Was this man truly confident and well-prepared? Or was he just putting on a show? The atmosphere at the dinner became somewhat strange. Dylan's carefully prepared humiliation session turned into my solo show. He tried several times to steer the conversation back to his comfort zones, like sports cars and red wine, but I brushed them off lightly. I acted like an outsider the whole time, totally uninterested in their commercial backpatting, just quietly eating and drinking tea. This kind of disregard made Dylan more upset than any rebuttal could. He felt like his punch landed on cotton, all force with nowhere to go. Halfway through the meal, Dylan finally couldn't hold back. He raised his glass and stood up. "Ethan, I know you're getting a bit full of yourself right now, but let me tell you, in the face of absolute strength, any luck is a joke." He pointed to a building under construction outside the window. "See it? Global Tower, a project my dad's company invested in. Next month, I'll officially take the position of Deputy General Manager for this project." Everyone around let out exclamations and compliments. This project also has Taylor Group involved. Dylan's gaze turned to Sophia, full of pride. "Sophia, for now on we're partners, so let's get closer." There was no expression on Sophia's face. She only nodded lightly. Dylan was pleased with the effect. He turned back and looked down at me with a condescending gaze. "Ethan, do you now see the gap between us? You're still playing your little stock game with tens of thousands of dollars, while we are already leveraging billions in capital." I put down my chopsticks and wiped my mouth with a napkin. "Global Tower?" I looked at the building and said thoughtfully, "As far as I know, the general contractor for that project is Hong Construction, right?" Dylan froze for a moment. "So what?" "Hong Construction is a listed company with strong capabilities." I smiled, a somewhat meaningful smile. "If I remember correctly, Hong Construction recently took on a big contract in South America, a hydropower project, right?" Dylan's expression changed. This was internal news from Hong Construction, and he only learned it through his father's connections. How could Ethan possibly know? I didn't wait for him to answer and continued, "That project looks beautiful on the surface, but it's actually a huge sinkhole. The local political situation is unstable, the geological conditions are complex, and the funding chain could break at any time. Hong Construction has practically bet everything on this project." Each of my words was like a nail driven into Dylan's heart. In less than a month, Hong Construction's funding chain will break, their stock will plummet, and all their ongoing projects, including Global Tower, will halt. By then, as deputy project manager on this project, you'll probably only be left to guard the construction site. When I finished speaking, the entire private room fell deathly silent. Everyone looked at me as if I were insane. Hong Construction go bankrupt? The Global Tower stop construction? This is sheer fantasy. You're talking nonsense. Dylan finally reacted, pointing at me and shouting, "Who do you think you are? A fired employee, stirring up trouble here." I shrugged, wearing a look of indifference. "Believe it or not is up to you. In a month, the truth will come out." After speaking, I stood up. "This meal has filled me. Thank you for the hospitality, Mr. Lee." I looked at Dylan's face twisted with anger and smiled faintly. "Oh, by the way, a friendly reminder. If you persuade your dad to sell off the Hong Construction shares he's holding now, maybe you can lose a little less." After saying that, I stopped looking at him and walked straight toward the door. When I passed by Sophia, she suddenly spoke. "Where did you get that information?" Her voice was very low, audible only to the two of us. I stopped walking and turned my head to look at her. Her eyes were no longer icy. Instead, they were filled with turbulent waves. She was a top-tier businesswoman. She could tell that what I had just said did not come out of thin air. That grasp of detail and judgment of the situation were not something an ordinary person could fabricate. I looked at her and suddenly leaned close to her ear. I could smell the faint scent of her perfume, just like in the last life. "I guessed it," I said in a low voice. Then, to her stunned gaze, I straightened up and turned away with a casual air. Walking out of the private room, I heard Dylan's furious roaring and the sound of a glass being smashed coming from inside. I smiled. "Dylan, this is only the beginning. The humiliations you piled on me in my last life, I will make you pay back 100-fold. I returned home, lay on the lounge chair on the terrace, and watched the stars in the sky. Tonight's confrontation with Dylan was just an appetizer. I know the real show has yet to begin. Sophia would never easily believe my words, but the seed of doubt had been planted. With her personality, she would definitely investigate. And the results of that investigation would only shock her more. Sure enough, early the next morning, I received a call from Lucas. "Ethan, what did you do last night? That kid Dylan is like a mad dog today, looking everywhere for people to dig into you. Have him look into it." I was frying myself an egg and feeling pretty good. No, he even went so far as to say he'll make sure you can't stay in Shingang City. Did you seriously offend him? He came to me asking for a beating. I put the cooked egg on a plate and sprinkled a bit of black pepper. "Then be careful. That guy's no good. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." After hanging up, I leisurely ate breakfast. I knew Dylan's revenge would come soon. In my previous life, he used all kinds of means to crush me, causing me to lose my job and sever my connections. But in this life, the one he faced was me with God's eye perspective. All his tricks, to me, looked like children's play. Meanwhile, in the Taylor Group's top executive office, Sophia hadn't slept all night. She mobilized every connection in her network to investigate Hongyuan Construction's project in South America. The information that came back shocked her. What Ethan had said turned out to be completely true. Hongyuan Construction did sign many unequal clauses to secure that project. And the local political situation was indeed, as Ethan said, seething beneath the surface and liable to erupt into conflict at any moment. This was a huge powder keg, and Hongyuan Construction was sitting right on top of it. "Ms. Taylor, here's the information you requested." Assistant Chloe placed a document on her desk. Sophia opened the file. It contained a more detailed investigative report on me, including my recent cash flows and the fact that I had rented the penthouse at Platinum U Mansion. Platinum U Residence. Sophia mouthed the name, her expression complicated. It was one of Shingang City's most upscale apartments, with a monthly rent reaching 6 figures in dollars. He used the $500,000 profit to rent a place like that. What on earth is he trying to do? "Ms. Taylor," Chloe hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "Mr. Lee over there seems to be pulling strings, trying to blackball Ethan." Sophia's gaze instantly turned icy. What did he do? He reached out to several headhunting firms and contacted some of Ethan's former clients, saying some bad things. Sophia's fingertips tapped gently on the desk, producing a steady clicking sound. The pressure in the office was unbearably low. Chloe didn't even dare to breathe. She knew Miss Taylor was truly angry, but she couldn't understand why Ms. Taylor would be furious on behalf of a former employee, someone so important to Dylan's partnership. "Tell Dylan," Sophia finally spoke, her voice devoid of any emotion, "that if he dares to lay a finger on Ethan again, all cooperation between his father and the Taylor Group will be terminated immediately." Chloe shivered all over, barely able to believe her ears. Offend the Lee family just for an Ethan? Why, yes, Miss Taylor. She didn't dare ask more and hurriedly stepped out. Only Sophia remained in the office. She stood up, walked to the huge floor-to-ceiling window, and looked down over the bustling city. Those words I whispered in her ear last night, I was guessing, echoed in her mind over and over. Guessing? Who could guess so accurately? "Ethan, who exactly are you? How many more secrets are you hiding?" For the first time, she felt such a strong curiosity about a man. Dylan's revenge came faster than I expected, and dumber too. Well, he couldn't ruin me through business. He resorted to some dirty tricks. That afternoon, I was fishing by the river when a few rough-looking young men surrounded me. The leader, a blonde kid with a cigarette in his mouth, stared at me with hostility. "Kid, are you the one called Ethan?" I lifted my eyelids a little, said nothing, and kept staring at my fishing float. "Damn it, I'm talking to you." A green-haired guy stepped forward and tried to kick my fish bucket. I flicked my wrist, the fishing line flew out precisely, hook and all, wrapping around his ankle. I pulled hard again, and the green-haired guy let out an "oi" and went down flat on his face. You fucking dare lay a hand on me. Huang Mao snapped, motioning the others to rush forward with him. I sighed. Looks like today's fish isn't biting. I stood up and rolled my wrist. In my previous life, I'd learned a few Sonda moves for social occasions. Not exactly a master, but more than enough for dealing with these punks. Just as I was about to move, several black sedans silently pulled up a short distance away. The car door opened, and a dozen or so burly men in black suits stepped out, their movements coordinated in uniform, clearly well-trained bodyguards. The few blonde guys were stunned. The leader of the burly men walked up to me and bowed respectfully. Mr. Johnson, we're late. You weren't alarmed, were you? I froze. I didn't know these people. Who are you? We were sent by Ms. Taylor to protect you. Sophia? I understood instantly. It was her who had acted. When the blonde guys heard Ms. Taylor, their legs went weak. In Star Harbor City, a tailor with that kind of status could only be one person. By Big Brother, it's a misunderstanding, all a misunderstanding. The blonde dropped his cigarette to the ground, stammering as he explained, I was Dylan, mister. Lee sent us. We're just taking money to do the job. The burly butler leading them nodded and gave the people behind him a look. Take them away and find out the whole story. A few burly men stepped forward and, like picking up chicks, shoved Huang Mao and the others into the car. The whole process took less than a minute, and the riverside returned to calm as if nothing had happened. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Taylor would like to see you, the lead man said to me. I looked at him, feeling a mix of emotions. Is Sophia trying to flatter me? Or is she testing me? Lead the way. The car drove all the way to Taylor Group's underground garage. I took the private elevator straight to the top floor CEO office. Sophia was still sitting behind that huge desk. When she saw me enter, she waved for everyone to leave. Sit. She pointed to the sofa across from her. I didn't sit. I just stood there looking at her. Ms. Taylor, what is this? Surveillance? Or protection? My tone was somewhat cold. Being stared at like a criminal feels terrible, even if the other person is Sophia. To protect you. Sophia looked at me, her gaze honest. I know Dylan's methods. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Because of you? I laughed. Ms. Taylor, are you mistaken about something? You and I are just former boss and former employee now. Dylan's bothering me because I made him lose face, not because of you. My words were like a knife, cutting the boundary between us. Sophia's complexion went pale. She hadn't expected me to be so absolute. Ethan, she stood up and walked over to me. I know you're still mad at me. Before, it was my fault. She apologized. The haughty Sophia actually apologized to me. If it were me in my previous life, I probably would have been so emotional I'd burst into tears. But now all I felt was irony. Ms. Taylor, you flatter me. You aren't wrong. You just did what you thought was right. I looked into her eyes and spoke word by word. Just like me now, I'm only doing what I think is right, which is to stay away from you. After saying that, I didn't look at her anymore and turned to leave. Ethan, she called after me, her voice carrying a note of urgency, even a hint of grievance. You were right about Hanyuan Construction. This afternoon, their South American project site erupted into military conflict. The project has been completely halted. The stock price has already fallen by 30%. My steps faltered, but I didn't turn back. So, I want to ask you for a favor. Her voice was lowered, carrying a hint of entreaty. The Global Tower project, Taylor Group invested a lot of money. If Hanyuan goes under, our losses will be catastrophic. I fell silent. In the previous life, the Global Tower project did indeed become a stalled ruin when Hanyuan Construction went bankrupt. Taylor Group was severely weakened and nearly swallowed up by several rival companies working together. It was from that time that Sophia became colder and stopped trusting anyone. Helping her would mean I'd have to get drawn back into these corporate battles. My plan to lie flat would be ruined. Not helping her, given Taylor Group's situation at the time. She couldn't possibly hold on by herself. My heart is in turmoil. I had clearly decided to cut ties with her. So why did I still feel a pang of reluctance when I heard she might be in trouble? Why should I help you? I heard my own voice, cold and hoarse. Set the terms, Sophia said, decisive and resolute. In the end, I still couldn't refuse. Because of the terms Sophia set, I couldn't refuse. She didn't say how much money she'd give me, or how many shares. She simply looked at me with a kind of vulnerability I'd never seen before and said one sentence. Tell me this once. After that, I will never disturb your life again. That sentence hit precisely in my soft spot. Isn't the life I want just a peaceful, undisturbed life of doing nothing? Okay, I agreed. I told her that the only way to resolve the global tower crisis was, before Hanyuan construction completely collapsed, to find a new general contractor and to obtain control of the project from Dylan's father, who is the largest investor in Global Tower. That's impossible. Sophia immediately dismissed it. The Lee family won't let go, and in this situation, no company would dare take over. Yes, I spat out a name. Tiangong Group. Sophia was stunned. Tiangong Group, an old state-owned construction company with a conservative style, never took part in risky commercial ventures. They won't agree to it. They will. I looked at her, my gaze steady. Because the chairman of Tiangong Group, Theodore Liu, owes me a favor. Sophia's eyes snapped wide open. Theodore Liu? That titan of the construction world. Would he owe Ethan a favor? Her mind could no longer process the successive shocks. She felt the man before her was like a bottomless black hole, full of countless mysteries. She didn't know that in her previous life, at her lowest point, she had once saved Theodore Liu's only granddaughter in an accident. Theodore Liu had then promised to grant her any one request, but she never used that favor until she died. This life, it just so happens to come in handy. As for the Lee family, I continued, you don't need to worry about them. I'll handle it. Seeing my confident demeanor, Sophia was at a loss for words. She realized that, without noticing it, she had begun to rely on the man she had once looked down upon most. Over the next few days, I began to make my moves. I first anonymously tipped the media with a bombshell. Dylan's father, George Lee, chairman of the Lee Group, was suspected of embezzling funds from the Global Tower project to cover losses in his family's businesses. Once the news broke, public opinion erupted. The Lee Group stock price immediately plunged. Other investors in the Global Tower also began to lose serious trust in the Lee family. George Lee was in a panic, scrambling to put out fires everywhere. As for Dylan, he went mad, convinced I was the one pulling strings behind the scenes, though he had no evidence. Then I dialed Theodore Liu's number. When I gave my name, the old man on the other end of the line fell silent for a long time. Child, I've been waiting for your call. Theodore Liu's voice was full of feeling. I didn't waste words and got straight to the point. Take over the Global Tower? Theodore Liu looked troubled. This project is a hot potato right now. Mr. Liu, I understand your concerns. But what if I told you I can get the Shingang city government to step in, provide policy support and low-interest loans for this project? Besides, winning this project would be the best opportunity for Tiangong Group to break into Shingang City's high-end commercial real estate market. My words sent Theodore Liu into thought. The bait I tossed out was one he couldn't refuse. What do you need me to do? Very simple. All you need to do is... I laid out my plan, holding nothing back. After hanging up, I stared at the night view outside the window and took a deep breath. The board was set, and the pieces were all in their places. Dylan, your time of death has come. 3 days later, an emergency meeting of the Globe Tower Project investors was held. The atmosphere in the conference room was solemn. Representatives of all the investors were present, including Lee and his son with sullen faces, and Sophia, whose expression was calm. As Sophia's special advisor, I was also seated at her side. When Dylan saw me, his eyes were red. If his father hadn't held him back, he would have charged forward. Ladies and gentlemen, regarding Hanyuan construction, I apologize. George Lee immediately played the sympathy card. But I assure you, the Lee Group is capable of handling the follow-up matters and will never let everyone's investment go down the drain. Assure? How can you assure us? A representative of the investors immediately challenged. The project is halted now. The daily losses are astronomical. The bank's dunning notices are already on my desk. Exactly. I've also heard that, Mr. Lee, you diverted the project's funds? Nonsense. That's slander. George Lee stood up excitedly. The conference room immediately descended into chaos. At that moment, Sophia gently tapped the table. Everyone's gazes focused on her. Everyone. Arguing won't solve anything. Sophia's voice was quiet but powerful. What's most important now is finding a solution. She paused, then continued. I have a proposal. She gestured, and I stood up, distributing a document to those present. This is the proposal put forward by the Taylor Group regarding the restructuring of the Global Tower project, I said aloud. The core of the plan is that the new investor, namely the Taylor Group, together with Tiangong Group, will take full control of the project. At the same time, we will purchase the project's shares held by each of you at a reasonable price. My words had just fallen when the whole room erupted. Tiangong Group? They actually hired Tiangong Group? George Lee's face went pale in an instant. He knew that if Tiangong Group really got involved, then he was completely doomed. Impossible. Tiangong Group couldn't possibly take on this mess. Dylan screamed. No sooner had I finished speaking than the conference room door was pushed open. Theodore Liu, chairman of Tiangong Group, walked in, flanked by a group of people. Who said we wouldn't take it? Theodore Liu's voice was loud, his gaze electric as it swept across the room. At the sight of Theodore Liu in person, the entire conference room erupted. The Lee father and son, meanwhile, looked as if all their strength had been drained, slumping back into their chairs. They knew the situation was lost. Mr. Liu, George Lee struggled to say something. Theodore Liu didn't even look at him, walked straight up to me, and held out his hand. Ethan, young man, we meet again. I took his hand. Mr. Liu, long time no see. This scene completely shattered everyone's worldview, especially Dylan. His eyes nearly popped out. He couldn't understand how this poor kid and his eyes could be on such intimate terms with someone as big as Theodore Liu. Sophia looked at me too, her expression betraying unmistakable shock and a trace of pride she hadn't even realized she felt. The man beside her once again worked a miracle. What followed then fell into place naturally. With Theodore Liu personally presiding, all the investors agreed to Taylor Group's plan. The Lees were completely ousted. Not only did they lose all their investments, they were also targeted by the prosecutors for embezzlement. After the meeting ended, Dylan sat in the corridor, numb and distraught. I walked up to him. Now, do you understand the gap between us? I returned his own words to him exactly as he'd once said to me. Dylan suddenly looked up, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at me, his lips trembling, but he couldn't utter a single word. I ignored him and walked straight towards Sophia, who was waiting for me not far away. I know that from today on, the name Dylan will forever vanish from our world. With the crisis averted, the Taylor Group not only suffered no losses, but because it led the Global Tower project, its reputation and strength rose to a higher level. At the celebration banquet, Sophia became the center of attention. She held a glass and moved effortlessly among the business magnates. But her gaze kept involuntarily drifting to the corner where that man sat quietly eating. That man was me. I have no interest in these occasions of mutual business flattery. I just want to fill my stomach and then go home to lie down. Mr. Advisor Johnson, we really owe you this time. A director came over with a glass to toast. It was MS. Taylor's capable leadership, I replied politely. Mr. Advisor Johnson, you are too modest. To be honest, when Ms. Taylor said she wanted to hire you as an advisor, we were all a bit nervous. We didn't expect you to be the real, steadying force. Those around nodded in agreement. I only smiled and said nothing more. Halfway through the banquet, Sophia came over to my side. Not used to this kind of place? She asked. I nodded. Too noisy. Then shall we go for a walk? I was a bit surprised, but I still followed her outside. We arrived at the Hotel Sky Garden. The evening breeze was slightly cool, dispersing the smell of alcohol from our clothes. Thank you. Sophia leaned against the railing, looking at the city's nightscape in the distance, and said softly, "No need to thank me. It was a transaction." I reminded her. Sophia fell silent. After a while, she suddenly asked, "How? Do you know Chairman Mr. Liu? I told you. He owes me a favor." Just that simple. Just that simple. Sophia turned her head and looked at me seriously. "Ethan, can you tell me who you really are? Why do you know so many things? Why did you suddenly change, like you're a different person?" This was the question she had always wanted to ask. I looked at her. Her eyes in the night were like two bright stars. The layer of ice that wrapped her seemed to be melting little by little. I sighed. "If I said I was from the future, would you believe me?" I said half-jokingly. Sophia was stunned. She stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly laughed. That was the first time I saw her smile. Not the kind of commercial, polite smile, but a wholehearted smile like the first thaw of ice and snow. It was beautiful, so beautiful it made my heart tremble. "You really are." She shook her head, as if searching for the right word. "Interesting." I said nothing. I knew she didn't believe me. But that was fine. The deal is done. I looked at her. As agreed, from now on we owe each other nothing and won't bother one another. Having said that, I prepared to turn and leave. My wrist was suddenly grabbed by her. Her hand was cold, but she held on tightly. "I've changed my mind." She looked at me and spoke each word deliberately. I frowned. "Ms. Taylor, going back on your word isn't like you. I don't want to talk about style with you." There was a stubbornness in her eyes I had never seen before. "Ethan, I'm not going to let you leave me again." I looked at her, my feelings a jumble. In my last life, I dreamt of hearing those words. But in this life, when they actually came, all I wanted was to run. "Sophia." I called her by name, not Miss Taylor. "Are you mistaken about something? The one you like is Mr. Advisor Johnson, the man who can solve your crises and make Theodore Lou keep face, not this useless Ethan who just wants to lie flat and be a salted fish." I can tell the difference. She gripped him tighter. Before, I was blind. I thought what I needed was a partner from a matching background, but only now do I know I needed someone who makes me feel safe. I feel safe by her side. Her confession was plain and burning. My heart leapt uncontrollably. I used so much effort to break free from that whirlpool. Was I really going to fall back into it again? I finally tore my hand away from hers. "Give me some time." I left those words and fled in panic. In the days that followed, I shut myself up at home. I tried to calm myself with fishing, tending flowers, and watching movies, but Sophia's look and words that night kept lingering in my mind. I admit it, I wavered. This woman I have loved for 2 lifetimes, when she set aside all pride and came to me, I found I could not keep my heart as still as water. But the wounds of the last life, like an invisible shackle, kept me from daring to take that step. I am afraid. I'm afraid this will be another illusion. Just as I was torn and indecisive, an even greater storm was quietly brewing. From scattered snippets of international news, I keenly sensed a whiff of danger. A financial storm, led by Wall Street titans and aimed at Asia's emerging markets, was about to hit. In my previous life, that storm swept through countless companies. Although the Taylor Group had secured its foothold with the global tower project, it collapsed in a storm due to overexpansion and a broken capital chain, and was ultimately maliciously taken over by an overseas investor. Sophia thus lost control of the company. That was the darkest moment of her life. I remember she locked herself in the office for 3 days and nights. I could hear her muffled sobs through the door. In that moment, my heart felt like it was being torn apart, yet I was powerless. Thinking of that, my chest tightened abruptly. No, I cannot let that kind of thing happen again. Even if it's to repay the debt from my previous life, I will help her get through this ordeal. I immediately dialed Sophia's number. "It's me." On the other end of the line, Sophia's voice carried a hint of surprise. "You finally decided to contact me. No time for nonsense." My tone was very serious. "Immediately withdraw from all your overseas operations, liquidate all non-core assets, and do everything possible to recover funds. The more the better, and the faster the better." Sophia was stunned for a moment. "What's going on?" A massive financial storm is coming, I said in a low voice. Trust me, and do as I say. There was silence on the other end of the line. I knew this was a difficult decision for her. The Taylor Group was in a period of rapid expansion, and for her to slam on the brakes now, or even reverse, would be like cutting off her own arm. Okay. However, after only a few seconds, she gave her answer. One word, without the slightest hesitation. This time, it was my turn to be stunned. You're not going to ask why? No need, she said, because you said it, so I believe you. A simple sentence, yet like a warm current. It instantly swept away every defense in my heart. So this is what it feels like to be trusted unconditionally. After hanging up, I didn't relax at all, because I knew the real battle had only just begun. I invested all my funds, what I earned from Chiming Technology, plus the consulting fee Sophia later gave me, nearly $10 million in total, all into the international futures market. What I intend to do is short selling, to make an enemy of all of Wall Street. This is a high-stakes gamble. If I win, I'll gain unimaginable wealth and prestige. If I lose, I'll have nothing and may even be saddled with massive debts. But I have no choice, because only in this way could we snatch enough meat from the mouths of those hungry wolves to make up for the losses caused by Taylor Group's contraction of its front. And only in this way could we utterly destroy that overseas capital that maliciously acquired Taylor Group in the previous life. I sat in front of the computer, watching the numbers on the screen flashing constantly, my gaze calm and resolute. Bring it on. This life, I will be your armor. The storm arrived more fiercely than I had expected. Overnight, currencies across many Asian countries plunged, stock markets crashed. Countless businesses went bankrupt, countless people were ruined. In Shingang City's business world, there was wailing everywhere. Many of the business tycoons who were boasting at yesterday's victory banquet now stand at the edge of the rooftop. And because the Taylor Group had pulled back its front lines early and reclaimed a large amount of cash, it was shaken, but its foundations remained intact. They became one of the few companies able to hold their ground in this storm. Everyone marveled at Sophia's foresight and boldness. Only Sophia herself knew that all of this stemmed from a single phone call from that man. She stood before the office floor-to-ceiling window, watching the world outside sway in wind and rain, yet her heart was peaceful. She dialed my number. "We won," she said. "No." I looked at the green number on the computer screen that signified our victory and said lightly, "It was we who won." "Ethan," her voice trembled slightly, "how much did you make?" I did the math and quoted a figure. On the other end of the line, there was a long silence. Silence, until I thought the line had dropped. "Ethan," she spoke again, a tone I couldn't quite place in her voice. "You could buy 10 Taylor Groups right now." I smiled. "So what? I'm not interested in your company." "What are you interested in then?" she pressed. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out to the terrace. The air after the rain was especially fresh. My flowers and plants, having been washed by the night storm, looked even more radiant. "I'm interested in you." I hesitated, then said the line I'd wanted to say in both my lifetimes, "interested in you." On the other end of the line came her suppressed, joyful sobs. 3 days later, the Taylor Group held a press conference. Sophia stood under the spotlight and announced that the Taylor Group would join with a newly established Voyage Capital to make strategic investments in and restructure several high-quality companies that have fallen into trouble during the financial storm. And the sole shareholder of Voyage Capital was me. As soon as the news broke, the entire business world was shaken. The name Ethan, overnight, transformed from a lucky poor boy into a capital tycoon admired by everyone. After the press conference, backstage, Sophia walked up to me and personally straightened my tie. "From now on, do you still want to be a salted fish?" She tilted her head back and asked me with a smile. I looked at the starlight in her eyes and took her hand. "Yes," I said earnestly, "but I want to find a place to be one with you." She smiled, her brows and eyes curved, like flowers blooming all over the world. I took her hand and walked out of the building. Outside, the sun was just right. I looked back at the building I once both longed for and loathed, feeling completely relieved. I finally understood that the meaning of being reborn once is not for revenge, nor for making money. It is to have enough strength to protect the people I love and to live the life I want. As for those former enemies and past wounds, they have all become fleeting smoke. The road ahead is still long, but this time I will not let go of her hand again. Easter egg. 1 year later, at the wedding of Sophia and me, Lucas, my best man, was dead drunk, clutching me and sobbing. "Ethan, that's not fair. We agreed to be lazy together, but you went and became a Casanova behind my back." I looked at him, half amused and half exasperated. Sophia came over, wrapped her arms around me from behind, and whispered in my ear, "Ignore him. Tonight, my Casanova belongs to me alone." I turned and kissed her lips. Not far away, a mysterious man in a black trench coat watched all this silently, then turned and disappeared into the crowd. In his hand, he held an old cell phone, and on the screen was a message that had just been received. "New Reborn has appeared. Target, Sophia." The man lifted his head, a meaningful smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The game seems to have become more interesting.